Jason, how are you today? Welcome.
I'm doing good, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Just so excited to have a chance to talk to you. You've got a lot of things going on. I'd like to introduce our future audience to you. This is Jason Byrd, who has been in the country music business, doing things for quite a while, along with a career in that we'll talk about in a moment, in kind of parallel universes. And
Yep.
then today in 2021, putting some more time towards that music to really let the masses hear this music, which is really needs to be heard. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
So I know that the big push right now in your career is coming from a time, I think it was about 2019, right around the time the pandemic was just kind of kicking into full force, where you had followed in the footsteps of many family members in to be a firefighter, and you'd done it for many years. And then you had also been working on your music at the same time. And in 2019, you kind of I'm sure what was a difficult decision to step away from that and kind of pursue your music full time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've done it for 28 years, working at the fire department here in Tallahassee. So, I mean, I wasn't far from them making the decision for me. You know, my time was coming to an end anyway before I had to retire. But the good news is I started really young, you know, so I've still got plenty of time, at least I hope, you know, to keep this thing going, you know, as long as people will enjoy it. But yeah, it was tough walking away from something that you had done for so long. But you know, it always helps whenever you got something else that you're really passionate about that you want to do. It helps you kind of get over that and move on into another direction.
Absolutely. When there's something else waiting there and something that you've been passionate about for so many years, as passionate as you are about your work, because it's quite a thing. It's a way of life. I can't speak firsthand, but just the many people that I've crossed paths with in life, it's a way of life to be a firefighter, and it's a huge sacrifice for family and for country to save people, to be willing to put your own life on the line to save the lives of other people. So I mean, first of all, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And secondly, when it's something you've known through your whole life and you grew up watching other family members do it, then even though music was waiting on the side, I'm sure you had to think about it a little bit. Like you said, your time was coming. You put many years in it, but it's like, wow. But it's nice that you had something else that you were passionate about to move into.
Yeah, you know, and it's one of those things, you know, with the music, I was doing the music, you know, the whole time as well. I mean, it was like I had two full-time jobs really in that aspect of it. But the music business is always changing so much, you know, and going in different directions. And you know, what's happening today may not be happening tomorrow. And you really have to put in time and a half in the music business if you want to make a living in it. So you know, once I got to the end of my career, I decided it was a pretty easy decision, you know, what I was going to do. It wasn't like I was just leaving to do nothing.
Sure.
So, you know, it freed up a lot of time to where I could devote more of my work time towards just the music business. And that gave me a little more time as well to spend with my family too, which is really important to me.
Absolutely. So it's the best of all worlds when you're getting to a chance to transition to that, and at the same time have more time with family, for sure.
Right.
So during the time that you were pursuing your dual, you know, full-time jobs, what were you recording a lot of music or doing more performing during that period of time when you had to kind of juggle both?
It was kind of a little bit of both. I mean, I performed more than I recorded. You know, when we record, we'd go in and record a bunch, and you know, then you wouldn't for a while, that kind of thing. So I was out on the road with George for a long time and opening up shows for him, and then doing other gigs on my own as well. So I was definitely performing more out on the road than I was in the recording studio.
Right. I want to take a step backwards in our conversation. You bring up George, and I want to bring up that. I want to explain to her. I want you to be able to explain to the audience what a pivotal part of your career that had that interaction with George, and more than a chance meeting, but a friendship that bonded over many years. How did the opportunity come about to meet George Jones, a country music legend, country music royalty? How did that come about?
Well, I just finished a demo, and I was trying to figure out how to really get into the music business in Nashville, you know, because I just started working at the fire department not too long before I started doing music more seriously, I'd say.
Right.
So I met with a guy at the local radio station. He and I became friends. His name's Bill Kelly. And through that meeting and friendship that we developed, George and Nancy, or George came to town with Vern Godston and Conway Twitty. And Bill was backstage and ran into Nancy and was talking to her and told her about me and things like that. And she said that she was interested in hearing my demo. So we mailed up a copy to her, and a few weeks later, she reached out and said that she and George had listened to it and they were interested in talking to me about how they could help me in the future with my musical career. So I went up and met with them and everything. We just hit it off, and she started managing me, and we hit the ground running. So that's how our professional relationship started. And through all the work that we did together, we developed a personal relationship.
Right, right. And what an amazing endorsement for you to, if you ever had any doubts about your music and how were you going to pursue it and how was it good enough for the industry? Was it, what an endorsement to get from someone like George Jones that, hey, yeah, if you think of all the people in his lifetime that probably crossed his path like you did, a chance meeting through another person, a radio station person, all the people who, adored him and sent things his way. Can you listen to this? Can you, let me sing it? Let me hum a few bars. Let me sing a verse for you. And you magically, through the friendship with the radio station gentleman, had crossed a boundary that most people don't get to cross,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was really surreal. I mean, to think about it, I would have never imagined that I would have gotten to meet him, much less
Right.
work with him and become friends with him. And you touched on something a minute ago about getting the attention of the music industry and things like that. And I'm not minimizing them by any stretch of the imagination, but when George Jones said he liked me, that's all that really mattered to me. I didn't care if they liked me or not. So
That's so true. From beyond that point, I would just imagine not a whole lot else matters that someone like George Jones could say that he loves your music. That would be enough for me too. I think that would be enough for me too. Really.
yeah, but there were highs and lows, and there were always times where things would happen that you were excited about and looked forward to, and a lot of the things that I got to accomplish in my career up to this point wouldn't have been possible without him and Nancy helping me along and just breaking down some of those barriers for me and putting me in front of the right people.
Right. How did it come about that he ended up singing on the actual track? So this was a track that you had written, Better Life is the single that's out right now. And it's basically a duet. He sings a full verse. I love the song. I know you talk in some of the literature that explains where you're at right now, that talks about, I didn't want to be selfish and keep it to myself. I knew I needed to share it with people. And boy, I'm glad you did, because it's just really something to hear him. You trade off the verses, and it had to be so neat to hear him singing your song.
It was, as a songwriter, most songwriters back in the day would look forward to having a cut by George Jones or George Strait or one of those guys, Merle. That was a win. When you got that. So my actual first cut was a George Jones cut that he sang a duet with me on. So that was really exciting. And, the way that came about, when I was in Nashville, I'd stay at their house. So I was going to the studio one day and I just talked to George about it, told him I was going in the studio and he was going to be in town, and said that he'd stop by, and he dropped in, and we had just cut the track and everything, and we're doing a little tweaking to it and stuff, and he loved it. And I just, kind of in a joking manner said, well, why don't you put on some headphones and go in there and sing the second verse and everything, and we'll make a duet out of it. And he said, okay, and did it. And that's, how the duet with him was born.
That's amazing. It's just amazing. And then, and when you listen to, I just loved listening to it. I had to put it on repeat a few times, because I thought how neat to hear you tell the story from your angle, and the first verse, and then the second verse, to have him from a different spin, from the locket the tombstone, and to hear the
Right.
two different angles going down the same direction, the birth date and the final date, and in the case of the locket, the day we met,
Right.
just two
Right.
different angles to tell a story about, and I just loved it.
Well, I'm glad you did. I appreciate that. That means the world to me. I've thought about this more as I've been doing interviews, and I get asked questions about the song all the time and the writing of the song and how I came up with the idea and all that stuff. And it wasn't until I started having more conversations about it that I realized just how important, kind of like you said, it was that, I'm singing on the beginning of it where it's early. And then George, an older guy, comes in and sings on the back half of it. It's just so applicable, and it just blends, I think, so well and helps paint that picture, of the song.
And even that's so true. That is so true. To that angle of it. Then one more angle on top of that is talking about birth, meeting, and then death at the end of a life, the end of a long life, and it just paves this path that just, I don't know. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could take credit for thinking that was the direction it was going to go at to begin with, but I can't. It just happened. It's like so many other great things in life. You can plan and plan and plan all you want to, but the best things seem to just happen, and this is one of them. That's
the beauty of life, is that it just, if you're open to the directions, like, what if you had talked yourself out of it? What if you had said, so give him the CD, give him the tape, and I don't know what I would say to him, and I don't know if he's not going to want, what if you talked yourself out of it, or what if it was one chance meeting and beyond that, but you were open to how could you help each other? How could you learn from him? He was your mentor, and just being open to when people present things, because some things would seem like otherworldly, but George Jones wants to hear your song. Sure, he does.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that whenever the demo that I sent up initially, this song wasn't even on it. This song wasn't written for many, many years after that. Right. So it was just, it was all compiled of songs that I'd gotten from different publishing companies in Nashville. But yeah, he loved them. And, when we met that first night, they were still living in Brentwood at the time. They were building their house in Franklin. But we went to his house in Brentwood and sat there and talked for a few hours. And he wanted me to play him one of the songs that I had on the demo. And I sat there in his living room, picking his Martin guitar that was over in the corner, singing with George Jones sitting across. It was something that I won't ever forget. And it's just stressful, it was a good stress, but it was pretty nerve-wracking, to have all of that coming together at one time.
How old were you when you met him?
I was 22, I believe, whenever we met. Yeah, it was somewhere right around when I was 21, 22. I'm pretty sure I was 22. So
you were just getting into that. I mean, I'm sure you loved music, throughout much of your life, but getting to that point, still just getting at the beginning of this career and trying to get your songs in front of people. And all of a sudden, the Catapult takes you into the vision of George Jones to hear your track, which is really something. Yeah, and that was it was a blessing and a curse too, to be to some degree, because I didn't really get a lot of time to play in the bars. I played with some bands in the bars for a few years, but a lot of these guys, at least back in the day, they'd come to town and they'd been playing in the bars for 10 or 15 years, honing their craft. And I didn't get that. I went, from a couple of years of playing in the bars to playing on Nashville Now and the big arenas and things like that, which was a lot to take in as well. I wasn't really comfortable in my skin yet at that point, but, they threw me in the fire and I had to learn as I went, but luckily I had them there to kind of, give me information along the way and to help me figure all of that out, along with other people, working with, Tracy Lawrence and Mark Chestnut and people like that, Danny Shirley from Confederate Railroad. Those guys were really good about talking and giving you insight and things like that. So I learned I was a quick study and I learned pretty quickly that, when you get up there on that stage, you better not suck. Yeah. Well, I want to bring up a stage moment that had to be surreal also. And that, like you talk about going from not really having that bar time up to some of these big stages. I saw your video the video on YouTube when you sang a duet with George at the Grand Ole Opry of Yesterday's Wine, that you sang Merle's part, the part that he recorded that Merle would normally sing that verse, and you were there singing it.
Right.
What was going through your mind when you were looking out at that audience and you were being introduced by George Jones as, here's a guy I want you to hear. This is a duet that he's going to step in on Merle's part tonight. And I heard the first couple bars of the song, and I'm hearing the audience cheering in the first couple lines. Like, okay, George has got the guy up here for a reason, to hear
Right.
your low voice, and they liked it.
Yeah, well, they were real kind. That was actually the second time that I was on the
Oh,
Opry.
okay.
The first time, and it's really weird because both times I was on the Opry was during the holiday seasons, and I don't know if they still do, but they used to bring the Opry back to the Ryman during the holidays, and
Okay.
the Grand Ole Opry would be there. So the first
Right.
time I was on it, I was at their house, and Pete Fisher called Nancy and wanted to book George on the Opry, and she got off the phone and said that, and I said, well, call him back and say George will do it if they'll have me on it. And she called him, and he said, okay. So within a little bit of time, I was booked on there with him. So, and another thing, not only was it at the Ryman, but it was also the radio broadcast that time. So it wasn't on television. Right. So it was just really, really cool. And it was with George again that time. The second time was a little bit more planned out, and we got on there for a reason. But yeah, it's both times were really, really incredible. Not anything that I'll soon forget, and singing Yesterday's Wine with George was something that I did almost every night when we played. So I was used to the song, but still I was nervous about being up there doing it on the Grand Ole Opry, because not only were the people out there watching, everybody on TV was watching, and I know a lot of these artists that were riding in their buses were watching. So I had to really bring my A game, and it went off pretty well without a hitch, I think. So it was fun.
I thought it was great. It really was. It makes a little more sense. It was the second time you had got even that much more courage, because it was the second time you were up there, because you seemed calm as a cucumber. You were up there, you're just singing, and you just, well, thank you, George. And you just get in there and you sang, and it's like, wow, it was really a great performance.
Well, we enjoyed ourselves, and we always had a good time when we were singing together. And having him there was a comforting thing for me, to have him and his band, because those guys were all family to me too. So, I wasn't alone. There were more people in the audience than there were on stage, but I felt like they'd have my back if I needed them to.
Right. I'm sure you shared that George shared so many stories with you and bits of advice. Is there any one bit of advice that maybe always sticks with you whenever you're trying to persevere and you feel like, boy, this industry, because like you said, the industry is ever changing. We've gone from a physical world of CDs and recordings to now digital and streaming, and trying to monetize it, trying to get heard, being on the right platforms. Is there any one bit of advice that sticks out amongst everything that he ever told you that helps you to persevere when you're feeling like, boy, this is an uphill battle sometimes with all that's out there? We have immediate access to so much music.
Right. Yeah, we do. And yeah, the biggest thing that George would always say was keep it country. He wanted traditional country to continue to survive and flourish, and always wanted, said to keep it country. Another thing that he always drilled in was, if you want people to think, if you want to be a star, you need to make people think you are, and your appearance and the way that you interact with people is really important. Your fans are the ones that drive the train, and you've got to take the time out to talk to them. You've got to be nice to people, and you just got to get up there and give them the money's worth that they paid their hard-earned dollar to come see that night. And don't take that for granted, because it can be taken away from you at any minute.
And I think especially with country music fans, I enjoy so many genres of music, and I'm sure you do too. Your heart is in country, but we hear there's so much music around us. Other genres and other talents that carry themselves. People who cross over from rock to country, country to rock, Christian to country, all sorts of different combinations.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like country music fans, of all the fans of music out there, are so genuine, and I feel like the artists also, so the fans are loyal, and the artists are too. That the artists really in country music go out of their way. It's true for any artist in any genre of music, but the country artists, really make those people feel like you're talking right to them, and they're hearing every word of your song. And when you meet them in person, you take that time to talk to them. Something special about the relationship between country music fans and country artists, I feel.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, the country music fans are in a category all their own, in my opinion. I mean, once they love you, they love you. It doesn't matter. I mean, the case in point, George Jones. I mean, he had a life that was, had its ups and downs and things like that, and they could have walked away from him many times, but they stuck with him, and they kept coming back whenever he was up, and even when he was down, they were there for him, and that's the beauty about country music fans. They're genuine people. They're hardworking folks. They're out there just doing everything they do that can get by, and you can't ignore that. You've got to take the time to thank the people that put you where you are. That's the only reason you're there, is because of the people that like your music and like you, and you've gotta make friends with them and nourish that relationship.
And I really do think that country artists get that more than artists in many genres, because I think sometimes people forget their beginnings. Not in country music. The country music artists just seem to really understand how important everything you just said is. How important that they built the house for you.
Yeah. Well, you can look back over time and see, name several examples of country artists, or that they don't forget where they came from, because it doesn't take long to get back where you came from. If you're not the hottest thing on the block, you're back playing honky tonks again, which there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Sure.
Just because you're playing an arena tonight doesn't mean that you won't be playing a 500 capacity honky tonk next week, and maybe a duo gig the week after that at some bar on a beach. You never know,
That's
but
right.
you got to treat every one of those situations the same, and you have to give them everything that you've got, and just hope that they keep coming to see.
Yep, absolutely. You've opened shows for so many big names in the world of country music, people like Loretta Lynn, Tanya Tucker, Tracy Lawrence, just to mention a few people that you've worked with in an opening slot or sharing a bill like that. Is there anyone in specific that you haven't worked with yet that you would love to either write with or tour with that just hasn't come up yet?
I'd love to go back on the road with Mark Chestnut. He was a lot of fun. And his music I listen to it just about as much as I do mine. I just love Mark. He's just a great singer, and his songs were just awesome. And he's such a good person too. But I'd probably have to say, if I could get out with Alan Jackson or George Strait or somebody like that, Tracy Lawrence, and that'd be great too. Just somebody that's doing, what it is that I'm wanting to do, and are being successful at it, to where I can learn from them.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these rock and roll shows, with country music in the background. It's a country show, and we try to keep it clean and family friendly and everything else. And those guys are just really classy. And I'd like to maybe one day get back out there with them doing some stuff.
Talking about the shows and whatnot, in comparison, what do you get more joy out of, writing the song and hearing it played by someone else, or you hearing an audience enjoyed it, or actually doing the actual performing yourself, being in front of an audience, or writing and creating?
Oh, being in front of an audience all day. I mean, I do write, but writing's not something I wake up in the morning and say, all right, well, I'm gonna write today.
Yeah.
It's just, if it comes to me, I'll write. From the beginning of my career, I've always wanted the best song. If I wrote that song, that's great. But if somebody else wrote that song, then I'm not going to turn it down because I didn't write it. I was telling somebody earlier, it costs the same amount of money to record an album with crappy songs on it as it does with an album with good songs. So,
yeah,
you need to let your ego go and realize that the best song on that record may not be the one that you wrote. But that's okay. Those guys are writing songs, and that's how they make a living, and I sing them, and that's how I make a living. So maybe we can just all work together to keep each other in business for a long time,
Absolutely. Do you find yourself in song circles or in working in Music Row with some of these different people, and and coming up with ideas? Does that happen in within your life schedule?
Well, I don't do it as much as I used to. I used to go up and write a lot. I had two guys that I wrote with quite a bit, Jim McBride and Jerry Sally.
Yeah, Jim.
And we just had a great chemistry, you know, great friendship still, you know, we talk all the time. And those guys, you know, were the first ones to give me any attention in Nashville when it comes to writing with me. And I'm a loyal person, you know, and if you're that guy that takes a shot on me, I'm gonna ride that until I can't anymore.
Right.
And we've written some good songs, you know, and some of them hopefully people will get a chance to hear, you know, later on whenever we get a chance to. We actually did cut one that we co-wrote together that's going to be on this new album. So I'm looking forward to people hearing that. We've shopped it around and had it on hold a few times, but nobody's bitten on it. It's a great song, though. It's a country song, but it's on the record too. So maybe you'll get to hear that one.
I always think of it, it just takes one person, the right person, to hear a song that could change the whole landscape of that one song. It's who it gets to, you know, and you never know who's in your audience. You never know who's listening to it. You never know whose office that recording is sitting at. And it just takes that one specific moment of, you know, grandeur. And before you know it, you know, that's why, I mean, I'm an amateur songwriter. I'm not pursuing my songs and chasing them. I'm in my world of 9 to 5, unfortunately, or 9 to 9, whatever it is. But you know, but it's I always think about that if the right person hears the song of someone who's out there shopping their songs, it could change a whole career. One song could change a whole career. And Better Life, by the way, has the potential to do that. It really does. Has the potential to just send you in a whole nother direction, a whole nother step up to, you know, as you continue your journey through this, a whole nother catapult continuing from where you left off, George.
Yeah, well, and I hope so. I've been really pleased with the level of success that it's had up to this point. People are really digging it. I've gotten some emails and text messages about family members that, you know, friends of mine and strangers that I have never met before have lost, and they heard the song and it brought back good memories and everything else and help them, you know, through that process, which is great. You know, I know you've heard it. It sounds a little cliche to say that because a lot of artists say the same thing, but it happens, you know, and that's just the power of music, country music in general. You know, country music has always been the genre that puts life to music, and life's not always happy. It's not always fun, and it's not always where someone's being successful, you know, and if you can hear a song that helps you realize somebody else is going through or has gone through the same kind of situation that you've gone through, then if that helps you through that, I mean, how powerful is that? You know, that's just a big, big deal.
It's amazing. It's really amazing because if you think about sometimes if you ever watch a movie that has at the bottom in the tiny print that says that these characters are all fictional and any resemblance to your own life, like they have to say that, right? Because it could be
right.
I'm sure that so many people, when a song is written, they feel like you took the words right out of their heart. You took the words right out of their mind. The person that you sang about is the person that they know, and how powerful it is. You know, they'll have that one moment to tell you after a show, say, or through a letter, an email. But the daunting thing is that they may carry that song for the rest of their life, and it may help them. Just like I had asked you, what is one piece of advice that George gave you that carries with you all the time? In his absence, your song could be someone else's mantra that they carry with them to help them through a difficult time their whole life. You meet them for 5 minutes and they continue to carry it with them for the rest of their life. Powerful, powerful.
Right. Well, and you want to make that a positive interaction and not a negative one.
Right. That's right.
Think about you positively down the road instead of, you know, a bad interaction. And, you know, I tell my band that, and anybody that's on the road with me or playing with me or things like that, is that, you know, realize that what you do is not just reflective of you, it's reflective of me. You know,
oh my goodness,
people aren't remember your name all the time. They're going to remember that you were with my organization, and that doesn't help any of us.
Right. No, it's so true. It's so true. So true. What do you think is the best way for people to reach the masses with music now, with all the, you know, with physical CDs not being in you know, in all the department stores and across the country? all the social media, all the different things, where do you feel is the best, besides the stage, of course, you're on that stage and when you can tour, but what is the best way that people can really, that you can feel you reach people with your music?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it now, and it's just, but there's also a lot of music available. I heard somewhere the other day that there's like 20,000 uploads to streaming services a day.
Right.
That's a lot of music, to have to cipher through to even get it out there where a lot of people hear it.
Right.
So, I think TikTok videos are huge now. I don't know, but I mean, I'm still looking for the answer to that too. We've done really good with this campaign that we've got going on here. And we've reached a lot of people and we're continuing to reach a lot of people, but like doing interviews with people like yourself and things like that, and just trying to get it everywhere that you can actually get it. I mean, and I'm no expert. I'm learning as I go too. So that's just what I've seen up to this point, but it is definitely, you don't have to be on radio in order for people to find you and like your music and for you to have a successful career in the music business. Radio is important, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to get out there, and you just have to be persistent about them and just work your tail off. And anytime you get a chance to put your music in front of somebody, you need to do it.
Right. So speaking of your specific music, people are hearing Better Life and they're saying, where can I hear some more of this music? You talked about the songs for the future. So are you working on an album right now, or an album's about to drop? What are your plans for the future now that you can focus on your music?
We're going to have a six song EP out sometime between probably spring and summer. We're going to have another single that'll come out between mid and late February, and that'll go to radio and like this one did, and be on all the digital streaming services and stuff. But the EP will probably be out somewhere between spring and summer. And, once we finish with that, we'll go back in and start working on putting together the full album. We've got a lot of stuff cut and everything, but by doing an EP, you have an ability to go back in and record some new stuff. So if another song comes along, or I write another song, or whatever the case may be that I hear, and I'm like, man, we need to get this out here now. Yeah. I'm not stuck to trying to work a whole album. I only have a half of an album. So that gives you some leadway and leniency in how you can pursue future releases and what those may be, So we're not in a hurry for the full album. Once we get the EP out, we'll obviously press up some CDs and sell those on my website and on the road and stuff like that. But the full album, that's not even on my radar right now. I'm just working on what we've got so far.
I think the EP is a great tool. I really do. I spent a lot of time working in the music industry for one of the major labels and watched the demise of the physical product, going from physical to digital, and eventually out of a job because of that, because of the change. They didn't need someone to sell physical CDs anymore. But right. I feel the importance of the EP really is you could price it at a lower price point. It's a few songs, just to, like you said, you could add a song and lay it around, because you don't have to worry about the pressure of, and now CDs are 74 minutes in length. The records were not that long, that right. CD is 74 minutes of music, and some people feel they have to fill that whole space, and no pressure with an EP, 4 or 5 songs, take it on the road, like you said, and it's a good way to be able to, promote.
Yeah. And, like I say, it gives you the flexibility to be able to put that song out that you get later, and, a lifespan of a record's probably, I don't know, 18 months to 2 years, I would think, by the time, if you got enough good stuff on there. Right. Before you'd have another one by an artist. This way you don't have to wait that long to put out new music, and you're not stuck with those 10 to 12 songs for the next 24 months that you thought were great that day, but now you're like, man, these are even better, I can't wait.
Right.
And then by the time you get around to being able to cut them, they may not be as applicable as they were, today. So I think it just frees you up for a lot of things, and lets you spend a lot of that recording budget on more of your PR and marketing and stuff like that, where, that's the most important thing right now, outside of the music, of course.
Sure. Is there any one bit of advice that you might give to someone that's just young and starting out? They've graduated from high school, they're maybe going off to a music school or not, and deciding either that they're just going to pursue music outside of a college program, they're just going to go out there and hit the road and start playing, or they're going to start writing. Any bit of advice that you could give to someone like that that's just starting out in the industry in 2021, where everything's changed so much, the rules are different?
You know, and I'm not one to be giving advice because, like I said earlier, I'm still trying to learn it all as I go. But you know, I think one of the biggest things that I've always tried to keep in my mind is that, you know, even when I started, I said, you know, this is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a traditional country singer, and you know, if that's not what the music industry is looking for, then that's fine. I'm not going to bend to them, and I don't expect them to bend to me. But if at some point our paths cross, then we're going to live that up as long as we can, you know. And then when we split ways, well, then there you go. We had a great run of it. So I guess that, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is just be true to yourself, because you're the one that's going to have to go to bed at night with yourself and wonder about the mistakes that you made. And if you're true to yourself, it's not a mistake. You know, you're doing what you feel is right, and that's that. So just don't be so eager to try to jump on board of what's happening right now, because it may not be happening 2 weeks from now, or you know, a week from now, for that matter.
Yeah, I would think that at some point conversations have come up in your interactions with people in the industry that, oh, we need you to be crossover, we need you to be pop country, we need you to do this, your voice would be perfect on pop country radio. But you know the roots of country, the traditional country that George Jones instilled in you, and that you grew up around with your family even, and then met George and even blossomed even more of that whole traditional country roots. That was, I could only imagine that maybe that's one of the ways that you can say be true to yourself. Because if you decide, oh, they're telling me I got to be this kind of country, they're telling me I have to, but then you have to go to bed at night saying that, did I really follow what my heart told me to do? Right.
Yeah. And I love doing what I do. And the whole time that I've been in the music business, I've been to country for country. So that was even 10 years ago. So I can only imagine how to country for country I am today. But you know, country music's changed, music in general's changed. And there's, you know, just like you said earlier, there's so many ways for people to get their music. Mm-hmm. And I like some of the stuff that's out there on country radio today. I just wish that they'd open up a few more spots out there for something that's not necessarily just, you know, kind of cookie cutter like a lot of that stuff seems to be, right. The flavor of the day. Yep. And, you know, because I'm really excited whenever I check my numbers on social media and the streaming services, because, you know, since this came out almost 3 weeks ago now, we're over 100,000 cumulative streams of this song. And that's people that wanted to go hear this song and listen to it. You know, they weren't just riding down the road and it came on the radio, you know, they weren't forced to, they asked to, and that's really cool, you know. So that says a lot about the audience that's out there that's, you know, starving for this kind of country music, you know. Right, absolutely. Jason, what would be the main platform where people would go, like a website, to find your music and then branch off to other parts of social media that you probably have links to? Yeah, they can go to my website. It's jasonbyrdmusic.com. We've got a mailing list on there, or a contact spot down there. And it's got, you know, the dates that we'll have. Hopefully those will be, you know, getting on there pretty soon for next year. And it's also got links to my videos and my social media pages and all of the streaming services as well, where you can go and download or listen to the song. So jasonbyrdmusic.com is the one-stop shop that'll give you directions anywhere else you need to go. That's great. Yeah. Well, Jason, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I love the song, and I can't wait for other people to hear about your career and want to hear this song and then the music that you'll be putting out beyond this. So I thank you so much for your time today. Well, I appreciate it too, man. And I hope that, you know, as this thing keeps going forward, you and I can sit down and have another conversation. I would love to. I look forward to that. Thank you so much for that, Jason. Yeah, sounds great. You take care. Thank you so much. You too. Thank you. All right.